Hello everyone, welcome back to Upside Down Data. Today I want to talk about DOT and what our risk indicator is making of DOT's recent price action and what that might mean in the context of the Parachain auctions that Polkadot is currently going through. If you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us on Twitter where we put up regular updates about our risk indicators and more. So what I'm showing you here on this first graph is the price history of DOT across time color-coded to the output of our risk model. If you're returning to the channel, you're quite familiar with these types of graphs. In brief, the price is plotted here on logarithmic form. Each dot corresponds to a day, and each day is color-coded based on the output of our risk indicators. So a score of 5 is high risk, a score of -5 is low risk. And you see that throughout time, the UDPI has done a pretty good job of identifying these low risk zones where accumulating DOT has historically been advantageous, as well as these high risk zones where DOT is likely to be entering into a correction or at least sideways action, kind of falling from those points where maybe taking some profits off of DOT had historically been advantageous. Now I want to focus more on what DOT has been experiencing recently as it's kind of pumped moving into the Parachain auctions as those began, and then what's been happening since as DOT's price has been correcting. So you'll see that DOT had this nice rally coming out of the summer, and then this second kind of leg up, the second rally that really led into those Parachain auctions being announced. Now, if you're not familiar with DOT and with parachains, I'm not going to go super into depth with it here, but in brief, the idea is that DOT is kind of this layer 0 protocol. The idea is that there are going to be a bunch of layer 1 protocols built on top of DOT. And so the way that protocols are able to build on top of DOT is by winning these parachains. That kind of allows them to integrate with DOT. There's a limited number of parachains that are going to be activated, and there's currently auctions going on for the first 5, and then there's going to be another slate of auctions a little bit later on going into next year that'll kind of round out the first slate of parachains that will be entered into DOT. And so this was really a kind of fundamental bullish factor. It was something that people have been looking forward to this for a long time. It's kind of DOT starting to finally realize its full potential by adding these parachains to it. And so there was a lot of bullish sentiment leading into those. And also there was a lot of demand for DOT as a result. You know, these parachain auctions, the way they work is that for a protocol to win a parachain auction, people need to donate their DOT essentially to the protocol. Now, people actually will end up getting their DOT back, but it gets locked up. So for the DOT parachains, it's about 2-year period where you contribute to a project. That DOT gets locked up for about 2 years. The project holds that parachain for those 2 years. Then there'll be another slate of auctions where the project will have to kind of re-win a parachain to continue to hold that slot. But what it means is that all that DOT that's getting contributed to different projects where people, you know, they want to see projects getting parachain slots, so they're putting their money towards those projects, and then you get rewards from the projects in return for doing so. That means that all that DOT that's being contributed is now taken out of the supply, so there's now less DOT available to be sold, essentially. And so there's a lot of demand for DOT going into these parachains because people wanted to contribute to these protocols to both help them gain a slot, but then also to get rewards from those protocols in those new protocols native tokens that will be launched. So that kind of is what likely fueled this more recent run that we saw DOT do up over $50. But what's interesting is even with the parachains kind of ongoing still, the price has cooled off. You know, we've fallen off of that above 50 level. We're now kind of consolidating around $40, a little bit below, you know, $38, $40 kind of general range. But I think it's also interesting to note that the risk level for DOT has also now been falling at this current level. It's been starting to cool off. And we can really see this better, I think, looking at this graph here, where this is just the UDPI level across time, scored -5, low risk, 5 high risk. And what we can see is that DOT had been getting quite overheated. You know, coming out of the summer, it had gotten up to around a UDPI of 4, a risk level of 4, bounced back up to around 3, and now it's been cooling off. And we've been talking about this a lot on the channel, how DOT had been seen to be kind of overheated, that it likely was going to likely to see a correction or at least consolidation, and that's exactly what we've seen now coming off of these higher risk levels that we had seen where DOT was above 3, now cooling off to about 1.5-ish, that general area. And something I think is interesting is thinking about this in the context of these parachain auctions, right? So as I mentioned, this was really this bullish tailwind that really pushed the price of DOT up and then elevated up into these riskier levels. Now we're cooling off. one of the things that I think is kind of interesting about that is these parachains aren't finished, right? They're still ongoing. There are a couple protocols that have actually already won or essentially won. So here I'm just showing a screen grab of the current standings of the parachains. I'm only showing you the top 6 right now. There are actually some more projects that are vying for these first 5 slots, but I'm just showing you the top 6 right here. And so Moonbeam and Acala I've basically already won. So Acala officially won the first Parachain slot. That auction ended November 18th. And so Acala is definitely in, they have it. But Moonbeam also being so far ahead of the next one down here, Parallel Finance, they've also locked in a Parachain slot. They're going to win the second one that's ending tomorrow. And so they've actually closed off contributions. It's now, you can't contribute to Moonbeam anymore because they wanted to basically preserve rewards for the people who had already supported. Essentially the way it works is that for every dot you lock up, they basically will give you some number of the native token of the protocol. And so the more people who contribute, the more dot that gets contributed, the more diluted that reward pool would be getting. So Moonbeam essentially made a decision that they already knew they were going to win, they were guaranteed to win. So they just said, all right, we're just going to cut off contributions so that we can now, for the people who already contributed, they'll preserve more of the pool for them. They'll get a larger pool of the rewards, and that's what's being shown here. The minimum reward right now is 2.5 glmr. That's going to be the native token of Moonbeam per dot, etc. But what's interesting now is that we're not in the early stages of the Parachain auctions anymore. If you were around and you were looking at this back before this first one started, a lot of these protocols were offering pretty decent bonuses or bonuses on top of the rewards you'd be getting for your dot just to donate early to kind of get them moving. And so, for example, I think Parallel Finance had a 40% bonus. So basically, for every dot you lock up, you not only get the normal amount of para, but you also get 40% on top of that in exchange. And then that has been the bonus has been decreasing over time. Now it sits only here at a 5% bonus. Same with S-Star here. That had been at about 20%, I think, kind of the early bird bonus. Now it's down to only 1%. So there was a lot of incentive to be getting in early, and that's partly potentially why DOT really pumped so high before these started, is people wanted the DOT ahead of time so that they could really cash in on those extra rewards that you'd be getting from these protocols. But I think what's interesting to look at with DOT's more recent price action is that, DOT has corrected pretty substantially from those highs. It's up at around over $50, like $53. Now it's down at $38. And so in a way, it's a lot cheaper now to buy DOT to be putting towards this. So if one was having to choose, do I spend $50 per DOT and then get some extra bonuses if I contribute or participate in these Parachain auctions from the protocols, that's one way you can get bonuses. But another way of thinking about this is that if DOT's at a discount now and these Parachain auctions are still going, that's sort of just like bonus rewards in a way. You can buy more DOT now with the same amount of money than you could have when it was at $50. You'll get more DOT for, let's say $1,000, whatever the case may be. And so in some ways, you're kind of getting a bonus in that sense now if you'd be contributing to some of these, where you're not getting that built in from these networks themselves offering you bonuses. But because DOT's cheaper, it's just you get more DOT for your money, and so you'd be able to benefit now. And so I think that's interesting about that is that if you did still want to hop into these Parachain auctions, for example, if you missed the boat early and you still want to hop in, that's something that's kind of nice. Even if you missed the kind of official bonuses for getting in early, there's kind of this bonus in a way that DOT has provided us by correcting in its price, with its price falling off notably off of where it was, 20% correction plus from where it had been up at the highs. Now that's essentially just bonus DOT that you could contribute if you were to be buying DOT now. Now, of course, that's not financial advice. You just make your own decision if you want to enter any of these Parachain auctions. But I think it's just kind of interesting. And at the same token, also what we just saw with the risk indicator is that the risk of DOT is also dropping. And so even beyond these Parachain auctions, even if you aren't interested in joining these, you're just more interested in DOT as maybe an investment, it's potentially going to be the case that DOT is going to be nearing a more favorable re-entry point where, it had been up at around 3, now we're already down at, below 1.5. The risk could keep falling, and it might be that DOT will actually offer us a more favorable entry point or re-entry point if, for example, maybe you had sold the pump at the top and then taken profits up there, or maybe you had used your DOT to enter into these Parachain auctions, but then are looking to reestablish a position. could be that risk is going to keep falling. If DOT either corrects more or kind of consolidates where it is, risk might continue to fall and might offer a nice re-entry point before DOT ultimately starts moving up again. And something I think is kind of long-term bullish about DOT with these parachain auctions is that we've really seen in crypto this value that's being placed on ecosystems, right? All these different layer one protocols like AVAX, Solana, where they have these established kind of decentralized finance or NFT platforms or things like that that really bring in demand, bring in people wanting those tokens to be able to use those networks to be able to interact with all those decentralized applications and things like that. And so the market really seems to be valuing that. And so those protocols have been kind of going to the moon. They've been really exploding in the way that the market values them. They've been putting in crazy multiples just coming out of the summer. And what DOT might be kind of setting itself up for with all these parachain auctions is its own kind of rich ecosystem. You know, just looking at these ones that we have here that are likely to win places in these parachain auctions, you know, Moonbeam is going to be its own kind of fully fledged layer one protocol that'll have a bunch of decentralized apps building on top of it. Acala is a protocol that's all about DeFi. They're going to have kind of a whole suite. They're going to have a DEX. They're going to have lending, borrowing kind of a thing, a stable coin that they're going to be having. It's going to be kind of this big DeFi thing. And then also with parallel finance, you know, Clover Finance being other DeFi centered networks. Astar is actually a network that's around helping to develop additional decentralized applications. All of these things are really going to be kind of an engine, the way I see it, for really driving ecosystem development on Polkadot. And so if the market continues to really value that type of thing, value networks that have rich ecosystems, this could be a long-term bullish thing, very much so for Polkadot, to kind of have all this development going on. Maybe it will also start really catching some of that value from the market and be rewarded for that. Now, obviously, who knows what's going to happen? You know, this is crypto. Anything can happen. It's not guaranteed that the market's going to continue valuing those things or that it's all going to work out that way. But it's just something I'm thinking about, that I personally think this is kind of a long-term bullish thing for DOT, that is kind of building itself this nice rich ecosystem just through these parachain auctions. And I suspect there's going to be a lot of development that's going to happen and potentially a ton of interest and money that might flow into that ecosystem as more of these things get built out. So just something that I'm thinking about. So finally, to wrap us up here, I just want to talk a little bit more about where we stand currently with DOT. So as I mentioned, we're a little bit below 1.5 on the UDPI, so that might suggest that currently the downside potential is still greater than the upside potential. But if you look at what's been happening over the past 30 days for DOT, you'll notice that we've been falling off pretty far from where we had been just a little bit ago, just a couple weeks ago, you know, when we've been up flirting with this 3 level. Now we're falling off pretty precipitously. And so if this kind of general correction in the crypto space continues for a little bit longer, or if DOT just kind of has to keep consolidating in this similar price range, this risk level might continue to fall. And then it might offer us some nice kind of re-entry point. Now, when exactly that might be or how low risk might go, who knows? We'll have to just wait and see. But it is interesting to DOT is becoming more favorable right now, right? It's not nearly in these kind of scary zones that it had been before. And if it keeps falling, it might offer a nice place to maybe be re-entering. And then if some of that ecosystem then gets developed after these parachains are finished and all those platforms launch, then maybe that'll be kind of the next big fundamental tailwind that'll push DOT on its next rally a little bit further down the road. So again, we don't really know yet. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but that's just something I'm thinking about right now. All right, if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us on Twitter. And remember, with UDPI, we're all going to make it.